She's not yours.
His fingers were crushing her throat. Elena couldn't breathe. The brick wall scraped her back as Derek squeezed harder, his eyes empty, dead. This was it. This was how she died in a dirty alley, killed by the man who once promised to love her forever. Then a voice cut through the darkness. Deep, calm, terrifying. Let her go. Derek laughed. Mind your business, old man. 3 seconds later, Derek was 6 inches off the ground, a stranger's hand wrapped around his throat, his feet kicking at nothing but air. She's not yours, the biker said quietly. She's not your anything. Before you continue, please subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Now back to the alley. Back to the moment everything changed. Elena Morrison had learned to count her blessings in small portions. A full shift without dropping a plate. A customer who left more than $1 tip. Walking home without her hand shaking. These were victories now. Tiny ones, but she collected them like coins in a jar, saving them for the days when everything felt impossible. Today had been a good day. 8 hours at Rose's Diner, and she'd only thought about Derek twice. That was progress. 3 months ago, she couldn't go 10 minutes without flinching at a loud noise or checking over her shoulder. Her therapist said healing wasn't linear. Elena was starting to believe her. The afternoon sun felt warm on her face as she walked down Cedar Street. Mrs. Patterson waved from her porch, and Elena waved back. Normal, safe, boring in the best possible way. She was thinking about the leftover pasta in her fridge when a hand grabbed her arm and yanked her sideways. The world tilted, her back hit brick, and then she smelled it, that cologne. That sickly, sweet poison she'd scrubbed off her skin 100 times. Miss me, Derek's face was inches from hers. His eyes were bloodshot, wild. She could smell whiskey on his breath, could see the familiar twitch in his jaw that meant he was barely holding himself together. Derek, her voice came out as a whisper. How did you find you? He smiled, and it was the smile she'd learned to fear more than his fists. The one that meant he'd been planning, thinking, getting angrier by the hour. You think you can just disappear, change your number, move to this pathetic little town and pretend I don't exist? His fingers dug into her arm. She felt the bruise forming already. I've been watching you, Elena, every day for 2 weeks, watching you smile at customers, watching you walk home like you don't have a care in the world. His voice dropped to a hiss. Like you didn't destroy everything we had. We didn't have anything. The words came out before she could stop them. Brave words, stupid words. Derek's hand moved to her throat. What did you say? Derek, please. Say it again. His fingers tightened, not enough to choke her. Not yet, just enough to remind her who was in control. Say it again, Elena. Tell me we didn't have anything. Tell me the 3 years I spent taking care of you meant nothing. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The alley walls seemed to close in around her. No one walked by. No one could see them in the shadows between the buildings. She was alone with him again. I'm sorry, she whispered, because that's what she'd learned to say. That's what kept her alive before. I'm sorry, Derek. I didn't mean it. No, his grip tightened another fraction. You did mean it. That's the problem. You've forgotten who you belong to. I don't belong to anyone. The words surprised her. They surprised Derek too. His eyes widened, and for a moment his grip loosened. Then his face twisted into something ugly. Wrong answer. He slammed her against the wall. Her head bounced off the brick, and stars exploded across her vision. Before she could recover, his hand was around her throat again, really around it this time, fingers pressing into her windpipe, cutting off air. You belong to me, he said, his voice eerily calm now. You've always belonged to me, and I think you need a reminder. Elena clawed at his hand. Her nails scraped his skin, but he didn't even flinch. He was stronger than her. He'd always been stronger than her. That was the first lesson he'd taught her back when she still thought the bruises were accidents. Please. She couldn't get the word out, couldn't get any air past his fingers. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Shh. Derek leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. Don't fight it. You know how this goes. You fight, it gets worse. You behave, maybe I let you breathe. Isn't that how we always did things? Tears streamed down her face. Her lungs burned. Her arms were getting heavy, her struggles weaker. She was gonna die here in this alley because she'd been stupid enough to think she could escape. I gave you everything, Derek continued, his voice dreamy, now almost gentle. A home, protection, love, and you threw it all away. Ran off to this nowhere town, working in that greasy diner like some kind of... Let her go. The voice came from nowhere, deep, commanding, absolutely calm. Derek's hand loosened just slightly, not enough for Elena to breathe properly, but enough that the black spots started to fade. She blinked, trying to focus on the figure standing at the mouth of the alley. Big. That was her first thought. The man was huge, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that seemed to block out the sunlight. He wore a leather vest covered in patches, and tattoos crawled up his neck and disappeared into his gray-streaked hair. His face was weathered hard, the kind of face that had seen things most people only read about. But his eyes were calm, patient, almost gentle, and absolutely terrifying. Who the hell are you? Derek's voice had gone up an octave. His grip on Elena's throat loosened another fraction as he turned to face the stranger. Nobody you want to know. The man took a step forward. His boots were heavy, and each footstep echoed off the brick walls like a warning. Let her go. Walk away. We don't have to do this the hard way. Derek laughed. It was a nervous sound, high-pitched and wrong. Listen, buddy, this is between me and my girlfriend. Just turn around and... She's not your girlfriend. Another step. The stranger was close enough now that Elena could see the patches on his vest more clearly. A grinning skull, wings, letters she couldn't quite make out. I can see the bruises on her arm, the stranger continued, his voice never rising above conversational. I can see the fear in her eyes. I can see your fingers around her throat. A pause. You've got about 5 seconds to remove them before I remove them for you. Derek's face went red. You threatening me? You know who I am? My father's a... 3 seconds. I'm warning you, old man. 2. You touch me, and I'll have you arrested so fast. The stranger moved. Elena had never seen anyone move that fast. One moment he was 5 feet away. The next his hand was wrapped around Derek's throat, and Derek was lifted clean off his feet. Just like that. Derek's fingers released Elena's throat as his own hands flew to the stranger's grip. He kicked, struggled, made choking sounds that were almost comical. The stranger held him there with one arm, easy as lifting a child, his face completely expressionless. Elena slumped against the wall, gasping for air. Her throat was on fire. Her vision was still swimming, but she couldn't look away from what was happening in front of her. She's not yours, the stranger said, his voice still calm, still quiet. She's not your girlfriend. She's not your property. She's not your anything. Derek's face was turning purple. His kicks were getting weaker. Foam was starting to form at the corners of his mouth. I've met 100 men like you, the stranger continued. Small men, weak men, men who think they're strong because they can hurt someone who can't fight back. He tilted his head slightly, studying Derek's face with something like curiosity. You want to know what strong looks like? This is what strong looks like. This is what it feels like to be helpless, to be at someone else's mercy. He squeezed tighter. Derek's eyes bulged. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Stop. The word was barely a whisper, but Elena forced it out anyway. Please, you'll kill him. The stranger's eyes flicked to her. For a long moment, nothing changed. Derek's feet continued to kick weakly at the air. Then slowly the stranger lowered his arm. Derek collapsed to the ground, gasping and retching. He curled into a ball, both hands at his throat, making sounds that weren't quite human. The stranger stepped back, giving him room. His boots crunched on gravel as he turned to face Elena. You okay? Elena couldn't answer. She was shaking too hard. Her legs felt like water, and she wasn't sure how much longer they'd hold her up. Hey! The stranger's voice softened, just slightly, but enough that it sounded almost human. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe. She tried to speak and couldn't, tried to move and couldn't. Her body had locked up, completely frozen between the terror of Derek and the fear of this new threat. Because he was a threat. Wasn't he a man who could lift another man off the ground with one hand, who could squeeze a throat without his expression changing? That was dangerous. That was the kind of dangerous that made Derek look like a schoolyard bully, but he'd stopped when she asked, "I'm not going to hurt you." The stranger seemed to read her thoughts. He took a step back, giving her space. "My name's Marcus. My garage is around the corner. You can sit there, catch your breath, call whoever you need to call, or you can walk away right now and you'll never see me again. Your choice." Elena looked at Derek, still gasping on the ground. Then she looked at Marcus, at his scarred hands and patient eyes and the Hell's Angels patch on his vest. "Why did you help me?" The question came out broken, barely audible. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had an edge to it that hadn't been there before. Something sharp, something painful. "Because I didn't help someone else once and she died." Before Elena could respond, Derek groaned and started to push himself up. "You're dead," he croaked, his voice destroyed. "You hear me? You're both dead. I know people, important people. My father will—" Marcus turned his head slightly. "Just that. Just a look." Derek shut up. "Here's what's going to happen." Marcus's voice was conversational again, almost friendly. "You're going to stand up. You're going to walk out of this alley. You're going to get in your car, drive back to whatever hole you crawled out of, and you're never going to contact this woman again. You're not going to call her. You're not going to text her. You're not going to drive past her house or show up at her job. You're going to forget she exists." Derek's face twisted. "You can't, and if you don't—" Marcus took one step forward, just one. Derek scrambled backward like he'd been struck. "If I see you anywhere near her again, if I hear that you've so much as looked at her from across the street—" He smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Elena had ever seen. "Well, let's just say I've done things that would give you nightmares for the rest of your very short life. And I've served my time for them, so I've got nothing left to lose." Silence. Derek's eyes darted between Marcus and Elena. For a moment, just a moment, Elena saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice was shaking. He was backing toward the alley entrance, his hands still at his bruised throat. "You don't know who you're dealing with. You don't know what I'm capable of." "I know exactly what you're capable of." Marcus didn't move, didn't raise his voice. "I've known men like you my whole life. You're only brave when you're hurting someone weaker. When you're facing someone your own size or bigger, you run." He tilted his head. "So run, Derek. Run home. And pray you never see me again." Derek ran. His footsteps echoed down the alley, growing fainter and fainter, until they disappeared entirely. Elena listened to them go, her heart still pounding, her throat still burning her mind, still trying to process what had just happened. Then her legs gave out. She slid down the brick wall, not caring about the grime or the garbage or the way her uniform was getting ruined. Sobs tore out of her chest, ugly gasping sobs that she couldn't control. All the fear she'd been holding back for 3 months, all the nights she'd spent jumping at shadows and checking locks and wondering if she'd ever feel safe again, it all came pouring out at once. She was barely aware of Marcus moving closer. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, just lowered himself to a crouch a few feet away and waited. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You're okay. Let it out." She couldn't have stopped, even if she wanted to. Minutes passed, maybe more. Eventually the sobs faded to shudders, and the shudders faded to occasional trembles. Elena lifted her head, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Her eyes were swollen. Her throat felt like she'd swallowed broken glass. Marcus was still there, still watching, still patient. "I'm sorry," she managed. "Nothing to be sorry for. I don't even know you. I shouldn't be. You just had someone try to choke the life out of you. Crying about it is pretty reasonable." Despite everything, she almost laughed. It came out as a wet, strangled sound. "Here." Marcus reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a red bandana. It was worn but clean, and he handed it to her without ceremony. "For your face." She took it, wiped her eyes, her nose, her cheeks. The fabric smelled like motor oil and something faintly like cedar. "Thank you," she said. For, for all of it. For stopping him. She gestured vaguely at the bandana at the alley, at everything. Marcus stood brushing off his knees. My garage is about 200 feet that way. Got a bathroom where you can clean up. Got a phone if you need to call someone. Got coffee that's only mostly terrible. He held out his hand to help her up. No pressure, just an option. Elena looked at his hand, the scars on his knuckles, the tattoos on his fingers, the absolute stillness of his body like he could wait forever. She took it. His grip was firm but gentle as he helped her to her feet. He let go the moment she was stable, stepping back to give her space again. Thank you, she said again, because she didn't know what else to say. Marcus nodded once. You got a name, Elena Morrison. Elena, he said it like he was committing it to memory. Okay, Elena, let's get you somewhere safe. Brennan's custom motorcycles didn't look like much from the outside. A weathered sign, a gravel parking lot, a building that had clearly been around since before Elena was born. But inside it was warm, clean, full of the smell of metal and oil and something cooking in a back room. Motorcycles in various stages of repair lined the walls and tools hung from pegboards in precise, organized rows. Bathrooms through there, Marcus pointed to a door in the back. Take your time. There's a first aid kit under the sink if you need it. Elena nodded numbly and walked toward the door. In the bathroom, she caught sight of herself in the mirror and froze. Her throat was a mess of red marks that were already turning purple. Her hair was tangled with bits of brick dust. Her mascara had run down her cheeks in black streaks, and her eyes were so swollen she barely recognized herself. This is what he did to you, she thought. This is what he would have done again and again, until he finally went too far. Her hands were shaking as she turned on the water. She splashed her face, scrubbed away the mascara, tried to make herself look like someone who hadn't just survived an attempted murder. It didn't work. She sat on the closed toilet lid and cried again. Quieter this time. The exhausted kind of crying that came when you'd already emptied yourself out and your body was just going through the motions. A soft knock on the door. Elena. It was Marcus's voice muffled through the wood. There's coffee out here when you're ready. No rush. She didn't answer, but somehow knowing he was there, that someone was there, made it a little easier to breathe. So, 20 minutes later, she emerged from the bathroom. Her face was still puffy, and the bruises on her throat were impossible to hide, but she'd done what she could. Marcus was sitting at a scarred wooden desk, scrolling through something on an ancient computer. He looked up when she appeared and gestured to a chair across from him. Coffee's right there. Sugar and cream if you want it. There's also water if coffee's not your thing. Elena took the coffee. Her hands were still trembling, but she managed not to spill it. I called the police, Marcus said, not looking at her. They're sending someone over. You'll need to make a statement. Elena's stomach clenched. I don't know if I want to. You don't have to decide anything right now. His voice was calm, steady. But if there's a record, a police report, evidence, it's harder for him to pretend it never happened. It's harder for him to do it again. She thought about that. About all the times Derek had apologized and sworn he'd never hurt her again. About all the times she'd believed him. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I'll talk to them. Marcus nodded. There's also a social worker coming. Woman named Grace Chen. She's good people. Helped a lot of folks in your situation. How do you know her? For the first time, Marcus hesitated. His jaw tightened and he looked away. I've got a history, he said finally. Did 15 years in Huntsville. Manslaughter. When I got out, Grace was the one who helped me get back on my feet. She's been doing this work for 20 years. She knows what she's doing. Elena felt like she should be scared. 15 years in prison. Manslaughter. But she'd just watched this man hold her abuser in the air with one hand, and she'd never felt safer in her life. Why'd you do it? She asked. The manslaughter. Marcus was quiet for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, rougher, older. My sister, he said. Her husband was like your Derek, mean, jealous. Put her in the hospital twice before I found out what was going on. She kept hiding it, kept making excuses. Said he loved her, said he'd change. He paused. One night I went to their place to check on her, found him choking her on the kitchen floor. She wasn't fighting back anymore. Wasn't moving. Elena didn't breathe. I pulled him off her, Marcus continued. Threw him into a wall. He came at me with a knife, and I... Another pause. I did what I had to do. He died on the floor of his own kitchen, and I stood there and watched. And your sister... Marcus's face changed. The hardness cracked just for a moment, and Elena saw something underneath that made her chest ache. She died 2 days later. Internal bleeding. From the beatings he'd given her before I got there. His voice was barely above a whisper. She'd hidden it. Didn't tell anyone how bad it was. By the time the doctors figured it out, it was too late. Elena set down her coffee cup because her hands were shaking too hard to hold it. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Marcus looked at her then and his eyes were dry but devastated. Me too. Every day for 15 years and every day since. Sorry I didn't see it sooner. Sorry I didn't do more. Sorry I was too late to save her. The garage was silent except for the hum of a refrigerator somewhere in the back. That's why you helped me, Elena said. It wasn't a question. That's why I'll always help, Marcus replied. Every time I see someone like you, every time I hear someone like him, I stop, because I didn't stop soon enough before, and I will never make that mistake again. A car pulled into the parking lot outside. Gravel crunched under tires. That'll be the police, Marcus said, his voice steady again. You ready? Elena wasn't ready. She wasn't sure she'd ever be ready, but she stood up anyway. Officer Sarah Chen was nothing like Elena expected. She was small for one thing, barely 5 feet tall, with gray-streaked black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried herself like someone who had seen everything and could handle anything, and when she shook Elena's hand, her grip was firm and warm. I'm Officer Chen, she said. I've worked domestic violence cases for 12 years. I know this is hard. I know you're scared. I'm going to walk you through everything step by step, and you can stop anytime you need to. Okay. Elena nodded. They sat at Marcus's desk, Elena and Officer Chen on one side, Marcus standing by the door like some kind of silent guardian. The officer took out a small recorder and a notebook. Start from the beginning, she said gently. Tell me everything you remember. So Elena did. She told them about Derek, about the 3 years they had been together, about how charming he'd been at the start, how everyone loved him, how she thought she was the luckiest woman in the world. She told them about the first time he hit her, how he'd cried afterward, how he'd sworn it would never happen again, how she'd believed him because she wanted to believe him, because admitting the truth would have meant admitting she'd made the worst mistake of her life. She told them about the escalation, the jealousy, the isolation, the way he'd cut her off from friends and family until she had no one left, the way he'd convinced her that everything was her fault, that if she just tried harder, loved him better, didn't make him angry, everything would be fine. She told them about the night she finally left, how she'd waited until Derek was passed out drunk, thrown everything she could into a duffel bag, and driven for 6 hours until she ended up here. In this nowhere town, working at Rosa's diner for minimum wage and tips, sleeping in a studio apartment the size of a closet. And she told them about today, about the alley, about Derek's fingers around her throat, about the moment she truly believed she was going to die, about Marcus. Officer Chen listened without interrupting. When Elena finished, she turned off the recorder and set down her pen. I'm going to issue an emergency protective order, she said. That means Derek can't come within 500 feet of you. He can't contact you in any way. If he does, he'll be arrested immediately. I'm also going to put out a warrant for his arrest based on what happened today: assault, attempted strangulation. Those are felonies. He's looking at real time. Elena's chest felt tight. He'll be angry. He's already angry, Marcus said from a samadhi by the door. He's been angry for years. Only difference now is that someone's finally doing something about it. Officer Chen nodded. He's right. Men like Derek, they don't get better. They get worse. And the only way to stop them is to put barriers in their way. Legal ones, physical ones, whatever it takes. What if it's not enough? Elena's voice broke. What if he finds me again? What if he, then you call me. Marcus's voice was steady. Anytime, day or night, you call and I'll be there. That's not a promise I make lightly, Elena, but I'm making it to you. Officer Chen looked at Marcus with something like respect. She can also stay at the county shelter if she doesn't feel safe at home. Or, she hesitated, Marcus, you still have that apartment upstairs. Yeah, it's empty. Would you be willing to rent it short-term just until things settle down? Elena shook her head. I can't ask. You're not asking. Marcus met her eyes. I'm offering. The place is just sitting there gathering dust. Rent's whatever you can afford, and right now zero qualifies as whatever you can afford. No strings, no expectations, just a safe place to sleep. Elena didn't know what to say. 6 hours ago, she'd been counting tiny blessings and hoping for a quiet evening at home. Now she was sitting in a stranger's garage with bruises on her throat, a police report filed against her ex, and an offer of shelter from a Hell's Angel with a manslaughter conviction. Her life had gone completely off the rails, and somehow for the first time in 3 years, she felt something that might have been hope. Okay, she whispered earnest. Okay, just for a few days, just until I figure things out. However long you need, Marcus said. No rush. Officer Chen stood gathering her things. I'll be in touch tomorrow with the paperwork. In the meantime, try to rest. You have been through a trauma, and your body needs time to recover. She handed Elena a business card. My personal cell is on the back. Call me anytime. I mean that. Then she was gone, and it was just Elena and Marcus in the quiet of the garage. You hungry? Marcus asked. There's a guy in the back who makes the worst chili you've ever tasted, but it's hot and it's filling. Elena almost laughed. A guy in the back. Yeah, Tommy. He's one of my guys. Does body work during the day, makes terrible chili at night. It's kind of his thing. Your guys, Marcus shrugged. Club members. Some of them work here. Some of them just hang around. You'll meet them eventually. He paused. They'll be respectful. I'll make sure of it. And if any of them aren't, you tell me and I'll handle it. Elena should have been scared. A biker gang, a converted garage, a man who'd killed someone with his bare hands. Instead, she felt something loosen in her chest. I could eat, she said. Marcus nodded and headed toward the back. Come on then, and prepare yourself. The chili really is terrible. It wasn't terrible. It was actually pretty good, though. Elena would never admit it to Tommy, a wiry man with more tattoos than teeth, who seemed delighted to have someone new to feed. You like it? He asked eagerly, watching her eat. Made it with extra beans. Marcus said you might not have eaten today, so I wanted to make sure it was filling. Elena glanced at Marcus, who was pretending to be very interested in a motorcycle engine across the room. It's good. Good, she said. Thank you. Tommy beamed. I'll make extra tomorrow. You like cornbread? I make cornbread sometimes. It's not as good as my mama's, but nothing's as good as my mama's May. She rest in peace. He continued chattering as Elena ate a constant stream of conversation that required nothing from her except occasional nods. It was oddly soothing, normal, like the worst day of her life hadn't just happened. Halfway through her second bowl, a woman walked in. She was maybe 50, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She carried a leather bag over one shoulder and moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had been doing difficult work for a very long time. Grace Chen, she said, extending her hand to Elena. I'm a social worker with the county. Marcus called me. Elena shook her hand. The officer said you'd be coming. Mind if I sit? Elena gestured to the empty chair beside her. Grace sat down, set her bag on the floor, and folded her hands on the table. No notebook, no recorder, just a calm, patient presence. First things first, she said. You're not in trouble. You haven't done anything wrong. Whatever happened to you, whatever has been happening to you, it's not your fault. Okay. Elena's throat tightened. Okay. Second, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to give you options, resources, information. What you do with those is entirely up to you. I'm not going to judge, and I'm not going to push. This is your life, and you're the only one who gets to decide how to live it. Something in Elena's chest cracked. She'd been told what to do for so long. Derek had decided what she ate, what she wore, who she talked to, where she went. Every aspect of her life had been controlled and monitored and criticized until she'd stopped trusting her own judgment entirely. And now here was this stranger telling her that her choices were her own. Thank you, she managed. Grace smiled. Now, let's talk about what happens next. They talked for over an hour. Grace explained the legal process, the protective order, the warrant, what would happen if Derek was arrested. She explained Elena's rights as a victim, the resources available to her, the support systems she could access. She also explained the hard truths. Protective orders are just pieces of paper. Grace said, her voice gentle but firm. They only work if the other person respects them. Some abusers do, some don't. You need to have a safety plan either way. What kind of plan? Different routes to work, emergency contacts who know your situation, a bag packed with essentials in case you need to leave quickly, check-ins with people you trust. Grace paused. Marcus has helped a lot of survivors in situations like yours. If you're staying here, he can be part of that network. Elena looked across the room to where Marcus was still working on the motorcycle, his back to them. He hadn't joined their conversation, hadn't hovered or eavesdropped. He'd just been there, present and protective without being intrusive. Why does he do this? Elena asked. Help people like me. Grace's expression softened. That's his story to tell. But I will say this, in all my years of doing this work, I've never met anyone more committed to protecting survivors than Marcus Brennan. He's rough around the edges, and his past isn't pretty, but his heart is solid. You're safe with him. Elena wasn't sure she believed in safety anymore, but she wanted to. The apartment upstairs was small. A bed, a dresser, a tiny bathroom. A window overlooking the parking lot. It was clean and sparse and completely impersonal. It was perfect. I changed the sheets this morning, Marcus said from the doorway. There's towels in the bathroom. If you need anything, I'm downstairs in the office until midnight. After that, just knock. I sleep light. Elena set down her bag, her purse, really the only thing she'd had with her when Derek grabbed her. She didn't even have a toothbrush. I can go to the store tomorrow, Marcus said, reading her face. Get you whatever you need, or Grace can take you, whatever's more comfortable. You've done enough, more than enough. It's not about enough. He leaned against the doorframe, his massive arms crossed over his chest. It's about what's right. You needed help. I could give it. That's all there is to it. Elena sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was firm beneath her, solid and real, in a way that nothing else felt right now. I don't understand, she said quietly. I don't understand any of this. 4 hours ago, I was walking home, thinking about pasta. And now She gestured around her at the strange room, the strange building, the strange man in the doorway. Now you're surviving, Marcus finished. That's what you're doing. You survived today. You'll survive tomorrow. And the day after that, one day at a time. That's how it works. Is that how it worked for you in prison? Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's how it worked everywhere. Prison, before prison, after. He pushed off the doorframe, turning to go. Get some sleep, Elena. Tomorrow's another day. He was almost out the door when she spoke. Marcus. He stopped, didn't turn around. Thank you for stopping, for not walking past, she struggled to find the words, for caring about a stranger. His shoulders shifted, rose and fell with a long breath. No one should die in an alley, he said quietly. Not you, not anyone. Then he was gone, his heavy footsteps fading down the stairs. Elena sat in the silence of her new room. Her throat ached, her head ached. Everything ached, physical and emotional, and somewhere deep in her soul. She should cry. She should be terrified. She should be curled up in a ball, wondering how her life had fallen apart so completely. Instead, she stood up, walked to the window, looked down at the parking lot below where Marcus's motorcycle sat gleaming in the light of a single street lamp. She was alive. She was bruised and traumatized and broken in ways she didn't even understand yet. But she was alive. And tomorrow, for the first time in 3 years, she would wake up without Derek controlling every moment of her day. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Downstairs, Marcus sat in the dark of his office, staring at the phone in his hand. He'd made 2 calls after Elena went upstairs. One to his club president explaining the situation, asking for extra eyes on the building for the next few days. The other to a buddy who worked at the county jail, asking to be notified immediately if someone named Derek Mitchell showed up in the system. Neither call had brought good news. Derek hadn't been picked up yet. He was still out there somewhere, probably drinking, probably planning, probably getting angrier by the hour. Marcus knew how this story usually went. He'd seen it too many times. With his sister, with the women Grace sent his way, with the ghosts that haunted his dreams every single night. The protective order would help, but it wouldn't stop someone who was truly determined. Derek had money connections, the particular kind of arrogance that made men believe they were above the law. He would come back. Marcus was certain of it. And when he did, Marcus would be ready. He set down the phone and looked up at the ceiling toward the apartment where Elena was probably lying awake, staring at shadows, wondering what tomorrow would bring. "I won't let you down," he said quietly, though there was no one there to hear him. "I won't fail this time." The silence of the garage held no answers. But Marcus sat there anyway, keeping watch through the long hours of the night. Because that's what you did for someone who needed you, even if they didn't know they needed you yet. 3 days passed. Elena settled into an uneasy routine. She woke up early, helped Tommy make breakfast for whoever happened to be around the garage, and spent the rest of the day trying to figure out her life. She called Rosa's diner and explained that she needed a few days off. Rosa, bless her heart, didn't ask questions, just told her to take whatever time she needed and that her job would be waiting. She called her sister in California the first time they'd spoken in over a year. The conversation was awkward, stilted, with all the things Derek had made her believe about her family. But at the end of it, her sister said, "I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you got out." She cried for an hour after hanging up. Grace came by every afternoon with paperwork, resources, and quiet company. They talked about options, shelters, legal aid, counseling, services. Grace never pushed, never judged, just laid out the possibilities and let Elena choose. And Marcus was there. He didn't hover, didn't ask intrusive questions or offer unwanted advice. He just existed. A solid presence in the background, working on motorcycles, taking phone calls, occasionally bringing her coffee without being asked. The other club members came and went, big men in leather vests who nodded at her respectfully and kept their distance. Tommy made terrible jokes that made her laugh despite herself. A woman named Ruby, who turned out to be Marcus's business manager, helped her set up a new phone with a new number. It almost felt normal. Almost. On the fourth day, everything changed. Elena was helping Tommy clean up after breakfast when the door to the garage slammed open. Derek stood in the entrance. His face was pale and wild, his eyes bloodshot, his clothes rumpled like he hadn't slept in days. There was something in his hand, a gun, Elena realized with horror. A small black gun that looked almost like a toy, but wasn't. "There you are," he said, his voice cracking. "There you fucking are." Derek's hands shook as he raised the gun, but his eyes were steady. Dead steady. The kind of calm that came from a man who had already decided what he was going to do. "4 days," he said, his voice cracking. "4 days I've been looking for you, sleeping in my car, watching, waiting. And here you are playing house with a bunch of criminals." Elena couldn't move. Her body had frozen completely, every muscle locked in place. The gun looked small in Derek's hand, almost harmless. But she knew better. She'd seen what bullets did to people. She'd watched enough news stories, heard enough horror stories. This was how it ended. "Derek," her voice came out as a whisper. "Please put the gun down." "Shut up." He took a step forward and Elena took a step back. "You don't get to tell me what to do anymore. You lost that right when you ran away, when you humiliated me, when you let that animal put his hands on me." Tommy had disappeared somewhere. Elena prayed he was calling the police, prayed he was getting Marcus, prayed someone, anyone would walk through that door. "I didn't ask him to." "I said, shut up!" Derek's voice rose to a scream and the gun jerked in his hand. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what's going on here? You're sleeping with him, that old biker freak. You spread your legs for him the second you got to here, didn't you?" "No, Derek, no. It's not like that." "Don't lie to me." He was crying now, tears streaming down his face, even as rage contorted his features. "You always lie. You always make me look like the bad guy. But I'm not the bad guy, Elena. I loved you. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me." Elena's back hit something solid. A workbench. She had nowhere else to go. I'm sorry, she said, because that's what she'd always said. That's what had kept her alive before. I'm sorry, Derek. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have left. I shouldn't have. You're damn right you shouldn't have. He raised the gun higher, pointing it directly at her chest. But it's too late for sorry now. It's too late for anything. Then what do you want? Elena's voice broke. What do you want from me? Derek's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the man she'd fallen in love with 4 years ago. Handsome, charming, lost. I want it to stop, he whispered. I want the pain to stop. I want to stop seeing your face every time I close my eyes. I want to stop hearing your voice in my head, telling me I'm not good enough, that I'll never be good enough. I never said that. Derek, I never. You didn't have to say it, I could see it. Every time you looked at me, every time you flinched when I touched you. You thought I was a monster. His finger tightened on the trigger. So maybe I should be one. The door behind Derek opened. Marcus walked in like he was walking into his own living room. Calm, unhurried. His eyes took in the scene in a single glance. Elena pressed against the workbench, Derek with the gun, the distance between them. Morning, Marcus said, his voice completely casual. Coffee's on in the back if you want some. Derek spun around the gun, swinging toward Marcus. Don't move. Don't you fucking move. Marcus stopped, raised his hands slowly, palms out. Easy. I'm not moving. See, just standing here. You, Derek's voice dripped with venom. You're the one who did this. You turned her against me. You poisoned her mind. Never met her before 4 days ago, Marcus said. And I didn't turn her against anything. You did that all by yourself. Shut up. Derek's hand was shaking harder now. You don't know anything about us, about our relationship. We were happy. We were fine until she started listening to other people, started believing she was too good for me. Were you happy, Elena? Marcus asked it quietly, his eyes never leaving Derek. But the question hung in the air like a grenade. Elena's throat tightened. No, she whispered. No, I wasn't happy. Derek made a sound like a wounded animal. You see what she does. She lies, she manipulates, she makes everyone think I'm the problem when she's the one who... Put the gun down, son. Marcus's voice had changed. Softer now, almost gentle, like he was talking to a scared child instead of a man with a weapon. I'm not your son. But some of the rage had drained from Derek's voice. He sounded tired, confused. No, you're not. But I've been where you are, holding a gun, thinking it's the only way out, thinking if you just pull that trigger, everything will be better. Marcus took a small step forward. It won't. Trust me, it won't. You don't know what I'm feeling. I know exactly what you're feeling. You're feeling like the whole world has turned against you. Like nothing makes sense anymore. Like you've lost control of everything, and this, he nodded toward the gun, is the only control you have left. Derek's arm was starting to droop, just slightly, but Elena noticed. She left me, Derek said, and his voice cracked. She just left, like I was nothing, like 3 years meant nothing. That must have hurt. It destroyed me. Tears were streaming down Derek's face now. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except getting her back, making things right, making her understand. By choking her in an alley, Derek flinched like he'd been slapped. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to talk. But she wouldn't listen. She never listens. And I got so angry. That's how it always starts, isn't it? Marcus's voice was still gentle, but there was something underneath it now. Something sharp. You don't mean to. You just get angry. And before you know it, you've got your hands around her throat and she's looking at you like you're a monster. I'm not a monster. No, then put the gun down. Prove it. The silence stretched out. Elena counted her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Derek's arm dropped to his side. The gun clattered to the floor. And then Derek collapsed, his knees hitting the concrete, his whole body shaking with sobs. He looked small suddenly. Broken. Nothing like the terrifying man who had held her life in his hands moments ago. Marcus moved fast. He kicked the gun away, sent it skidding across the floor to where Elena could grab it. Then he knelt down beside Derek, one hand on the younger man's shoulder. It's okay, Marcus said quietly. It's over now. I'm sorry. Derek's voice was muffled against his own chest. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt her. I never meant to be like this. I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to be different. That's the first step, admitting you don't know. Marcus looked up at Elena, his eyes asking a silent question. She nodded. She was okay. Shaking like a leaf, but okay. There's help for people like you, Marcus continued. Programs, therapy. It won't be easy and it won't be quick, but you can change if you want to. I do want to. I do. Derek looked up, his face a mess of tears and snot. Elena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. For the bruises and the fear and the alley. I'm sorry. Elena didn't know what to buy. Part of her wanted to scream at him. Part of her wanted to run. Part of her, a small, stupid part, wanted to believe him. But she'd believed him before. I can't forgive you, she said finally. Not right now, maybe not ever. But I hope you get help, Derek. I really do. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer, Tommy appeared from the backroom phone still in his hand. Cops are 2 minutes out. Marcus nodded. He didn't let go of Derek's shoulder. You're going to go with them. Peacefully. No fighting, no resisting. They're going to take you to a hospital, get you evaluated. It'll be better than jail. Will you tell them I cooperated? Derek looked up at Marcus like a child seeking approval. Will you tell them I put the gun down? I'll tell them exactly what happened. The police arrived 45 seconds later. Elena watched them take Derek away. He went quietly, just like Marcus promised, his head bowed and his hands cuffed behind his back. He didn't look at her as they led him past, didn't say another word. When the last patrol car pulled away, Elena's legs finally gave out. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you, he said. I've got you. She cried into his chest, big heaving sobs that shook her whole body. All the fear she'd been holding back, all the terror of those moments when she'd been staring down the barrel of Derek's gun, it all came pouring out. Marcus just held her, solid, steady, patient. Is it over? She managed between sobs. Is it really over? Yeah, Marcus said quietly. It's over. But even as he said it, Elena knew it wasn't true. Not really. The immediate danger was gone, yes. Derek was in custody. The gun was in police evidence. She was safe. But the trauma wasn't over. The nightmares weren't over. The long, hard work of rebuilding her life and her sense of self that was just beginning. And somehow that thought was both terrifying and hopeful. 3 weeks later, Elena was still living above the garage. What had started as a temporary arrangement had slowly become something more permanent. She'd offered to pay rent a dozen times, and Marcus had refused a dozen times. Eventually, they'd compromised. She helped with the bookkeeping, answered phones, kept the office organized, and in return, she had a place to stay. It wasn't charity, Marcus insisted. It was employment. Elena knew better, but she'd stopped arguing about it. Derek had been transferred to a psychiatric facility after his initial evaluation. The doctors had diagnosed him with something. Elena didn't remember the exact words, but they involved personality disorder and intermittent explosive, and a lot of other clinical terms that basically meant what she'd always known: something was broken inside him. He'd written her a letter. She hadn't opened it. Grace had helped her get enrolled in a victims advocacy program, free therapy, legal assistance, help navigating the system. She went twice a week, sitting in a small office with a woman named Dr. Martinez, who asked gentle questions and never pushed for answers. It was harder than Elena expected. Talking about Derek, about the things he'd done, about the things she'd let him do because she'd been too scared or too broken to stop him. But slowly, painfully, she was starting to understand that none of it had been her fault. The garage had become a strange kind of home. Tommy made breakfast every morning, usually something involving too much cheese and not enough vegetables. Ruby handled the business issue of things with terrifying efficiency. The club members came and went, treating Elena with a careful politeness that she eventually realized was respect. And Marcus was Marcus. He didn't talk much, didn't ask personal questions, didn't hover or smother or try to fix her. He just was there, a steady presence in the background of her days, working on motorcycles, taking calls, occasionally sitting with her in companionable silence when the nights got too long. She found herself watching him sometimes, wondering about the man behind the tattoos and the leather in the 15 years of prison time, wondering what he'd been like before his sister died, before everything went wrong. One night, about a month after Derek's arrest, she finally worked up the courage to ask. They were sitting on the back steps of the garage watching the sunset turn the sky orange and pink. Marcus had a beer in his hand. Elena had a cup of tea that Tommy had insisted on making her. It was terrible tea, but she drank it anyway because Tommy looked so proud of himself. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus glanced at her. "Depends on what it is." "Your sister, what was she like?" He was quiet for so long that Elena thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "She was better than me. Always was. Smarter, kinder, the kind of person who'd give you the shirt off her back and then apologize for not giving you more." He took a long pull from his beer. "Her name was Maria. She was 2 years younger than me. I was supposed to protect her." "What happened?" "Same thing that almost happened to you. She met a man, charming, good-looking, knew exactly what to say to make her feel special." His jaw tightened. "By the time I figured out what was going on, she'd already married him. Already cut me out of her life because he'd convinced her I was the problem." Elena felt her chest tighten. She knew this story. She'd lived this story. "I should have tried harder," Marcus continued. "Should have broken down her door, forced her to listen. But I was angry, hurt. My own sister choosing some guy over me. So I stayed away. Told myself she'd figure it out eventually. That she'd come back when she was ready. But she didn't. No, she didn't." Marcus's voice had gone flat, empty. "I got a call one night from a neighbor. Said she'd heard screaming. Said the husband had been drinking. I drove over there as fast as I could, but by the time I got there..." He stopped, swallowed hard. He had her on the kitchen floor, hands around her throat. She wasn't fighting anymore, wasn't moving. And I lost it. Pulled him off her, threw him across the room. He came at me with a knife and "You defended yourself?" "No." Marcus looked at her then and his eyes were devastated. "I didn't defend myself. I killed him. There's a difference. He came at me with that knife and I could have disarmed him, could have knocked him out, could have done 100 different things. But I didn't want to stop him. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted him to feel what Maria felt, what she'd been feeling for years while I did nothing." Elena didn't know what to say, so she said nothing, just sat there, bearing witness to his pain. "The prosecutor called it voluntary manslaughter," Marcus continued. "My lawyer said I was lucky. Could have been murder too with the rage I showed. But the jury, they saw the pictures of Maria, saw the hospital reports, saw what that man had done to her. They gave me the minimum sentence. And Maria..." Marcus's hand tightened around the beer bottle. "She died 2 days later. Internal bleeding. From beatings I didn't know about. Injuries she'd hidden because she was ashamed, because she thought it was her fault." His voice broke on the last word. "She died thinking she deserved it, Elena. My baby sister. The sweetest person I ever knew. She died believing she wasn't worthy of being saved." Elena reached out without thinking and put her hand over his. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, rough with calluses. "It wasn't your fault." "Yeah, that's what 15 years of prison therapy told me." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Some days I almost believe it." "So that's why you do this, help women like me." "I can't save Maria, can't go back and do things differently. But maybe I can save someone else. Maybe every woman I help balances the scales a little bit, makes up for the one I failed." Elena squeezed his hand. "You didn't fail her, and you didn't fail me." Marcus turned to look at her. In the fading light, his face looked younger somehow, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "You remind me of her, you know. Not in looks, just the way you're fighting to rebuild your life, the way you refuse to give up even when everything's stacked against you. Maria had that same fire, until he beat it out of her. No one's going to beat it out of me. No." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "No, I don't think they will." They sat in silence after that, watching the last traces of color fade from the sky. Elena didn't let go of his hand. He didn't pull away. Something had shifted between them. She wasn't sure what it meant yet, wasn't sure she was ready to figure it out. But for the first time in years, she felt like she had a future worth thinking about. Rosa's diner looked exactly the same. Elena stood outside the front door, her heart pounding. She'd been away for over a month now. Rosa had held her job just like she promised, but walking back in felt like returning to another life. A before Derek life. A before Marcus life. A life that didn't exist anymore. You gonna stand there all day, or you gonna come in? Rosa herself was at the door. Arms crossed, one eyebrow raised. She was a small woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen everything and judged most of it. I'm coming. Elena took a deep breath and stepped inside. The smell hit her first: coffee and bacon and something sweet baking in the back. Then the sounds, chatter from the regulars, clink of silverware, the old jukebox playing something from the 60s. Home, Elena thought, and then corrected herself. Not home, just familiar. You look better than the last time I saw you, Rosa said, leading her toward the back. Less like a ghost, more like a person. Thanks, I think. Rosa stopped and turned to face her. Her expression had softened. I heard what happened. About that boy with the gun. About the biker who saved you. Whole town's talking about it. Elena's stomach clenched. What are they saying? Depends on who you ask. Some folks think you're a hero. Some think you're a fool for staying at that garage. And some, Rosa's eyes hardened, some think you got what you deserve for dating a violent man in the first place. Of course they do. Hey. Rosa grabbed her arm. Not hard, just enough to get her attention. You listen to me. What happened to you wasn't your fault. Anyone who says different is an idiot who's never had to survive something. You got out, you're rebuilding. That takes more courage than most people have in their whole damn lives. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes. Thank you, Rosa. Don't thank me. Just get back to work. The morning shift's a disaster without you. Elena laughed. It came out watery, but it was real. Yes, ma'am. The first few hours were hard. Elena's hands shook when she poured coffee. She jumped at sudden noises. Every time the door opened, she half expected to see Derek standing there, that dead look in his eyes. But he wasn't there. He was locked up in a hospital somewhere, getting help that should have come years ago. And she was here, alive, working, moving forward. Around noon, the diner cleared out. Elena was wiping down tables when the door opened and a woman walked in. She was young, maybe 22 or 23, with dark hair, pulled back in a messy ponytail, and a bruise on her cheekbone that she tried to cover with makeup. She moved like someone who was used to being hit. Careful, watchful, ready to flinch. Elena recognized that walk. Can I help you? The woman looked up, startled. I'm looking for someone. Elena Morrison. That's me? Oh. The woman's eyes filled with tears. They said, at the police station, they said you might be able to help me, that you knew about places to go, people who could. She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Elena set down her rag and walked over to where the woman stood, slowly so as not to startle her. What's your name? Jessica Parker. Hi, Jessica. Would you like to sit down? I can get you some coffee, or tea if you prefer. Jessica nodded, her whole body trembling. Tea, please, if it's not too much trouble. It's no trouble at all. Elena led her to a booth in the back, away from the windows, away from prying eyes. She ordered tea from Rosa, who took one look at Jessica and understood immediately. Take all the time you need, Rosa said quietly. I'll cover the floor. When the tea came, Jessica wrapped her hands around the cup like it was a lifeline. Steam curled up between them, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. You don't have to tell me anything, Elena said finally. Not if you're not ready, but I'm here, and I'm listening. Jessica's lip trembled. He said he loved me. He said he'd never hurt me. But then he did, and he kept doing it, and I kept believing him when he said it would stop. I know. I tried to leave once. He found me, brought me back, said if I ever tried again, he'd kill me. A tear slid down Jessica's cheek. I believe him. I really think he would. Where is he now? At work. He doesn't know I left. I was doing laundry and I saw this article about a woman who got away, who found help. And I thought maybe. Elena reached across the table and took Jessica's hand. You were right to come. There are people who can help you. Safe places you can go. And I promise no one is going to let him hurt you again. Jessica broke down crying, deep wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Elena held her hand and let her cry, remembering what it felt like to finally admit out loud that you were being hurt, remembering the terror and the relief and the overwhelming sense that everything was about to change. When Jessica's sobs finally quieted, Elena pulled out her phone. "I'm going to call someone," she said. "Her name is Grace. She's a social worker. She helped me when I was where you are now. She'll know what to do." "I'm scared. I know. I was scared too. But being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave." Grace arrived 20 minutes later. She sat with Jessica for over an hour explaining options, answering questions, making phone calls. By the time she was done, they had a plan. Jessica would go to the county shelter tonight, and tomorrow Grace would help her file for a protective order. As Grace led Jessica toward the door, the younger woman turned back to look at Elena. "Thank you," she said. "You saved my life." Elena shook her head. "I didn't save anything. You saved yourself. You walked out that door. You came looking for help. That was all you." Jessica managed a watery smile. "Maybe, but you showed me it was possible." After they left, Elena stood alone in the diner. The lunch rush would be starting soon. She should get back to work. But she couldn't move. Something had shifted. Something important. For months, she'd been focused on surviving, on getting through each day without falling apart, on healing her own wounds. But now, for the first time, she'd helped someone else, used her pain for something bigger than herself. And it felt like purpose. That night, she told Marcus what had happened. They were sitting on the back steps again, their unofficial meeting place. Marcus listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "You did good," he said finally. "I didn't do anything. Grace did all the work. You were there, you listened. You made her feel like she wasn't alone." He turned to look at her, and "That's not nothing, Elena. That's everything." "I want to do more." The words came out before she could stop them. But once they were out, she realized she meant them. "I want to help other women, like Grace helped me, like you helped me. I don't know how yet. I don't have a degree or training or any of the things I'd need, but I want to learn. I want to make this mean something." Marcus studied her face. "You know it won't be easy. This kind of work, it takes everything out of you. You see things that keep you up at night, hear stories that break your heart." "I know. And you still want to do it." "Yes." A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. It changed his whole face, made him look almost handsome beneath the scars and the tattoos. "Then we'll figure it out," he said. "Together. Together. You think I'm letting you do this alone? I've been helping survivors for years. Got connections, resources. Know people who know people." He shrugged. "Figure it's about time I had a partner." Elena felt something warm bloom in her chest. Hope, maybe, or something even more dangerous. "Partners," she said, testing the word. "Partners." Yeah, and they shook on it there on the back steps with the stars coming out overhead and the smell of motor oil drifting from the garage. It wasn't a plan, not really, just a promise, a first step. But Elena had learned that first steps were the most important ones. Everything that followed started with someone being willing to move. The next morning, Officer Chen showed up at the garage. Elena saw the patrol car pull in and felt her stomach drop. Bad news. It had to be bad news. Derek had escaped. Derek had made bail. Derek had relaxed. Officer Chen held up her hands as she got out of the car. "It's good news. Mostly. Mostly. Derek pled guilty this morning. Assault, attempted strangulation, violating the protective order. His lawyer worked out a deal, 18 months in the psychiatric facility, then 5 years probation with mandatory anger management." Elena wasn't sure how to feel. Relief, anger, something that might have been disappointment. That's it, 18 months. With his history and his father's lawyers, we're lucky to get that much. Officer Chen's face was sympathetic. "I know it doesn't feel like enough, but he's got a record now. Any future violation, he's looking at serious time. And the psychiatric treatment, it might actually help him. Or it might not." "Or it might not," the officer agreed. "That's why we keep the protective order active. That's why you stay alert. That's why you keep rebuilding your support system. Elena nodded slowly. It wasn't justice, not really, but it was something. There's one more thing, Officer Chen said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He wrote this, asked me to give it to you. You don't have to read it. You don't have to do anything with it. I just promised I'd deliver it. Elena stared at the paper. Derek's handwriting was on the outside. Her name. Just her name. Thank you, she said, taking it. She didn't open it until that night. Alone in her apartment, she sat on the edge of the bed and unfolded the letter with trembling hands. Elena, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. What I did to you was wrong, all of it. The control, the jealousy, the hitting, the choking. I told myself I loved you, but that wasn't love. I know that now. The doctors here say I have something called narcissistic personality disorder with intermittent explosive tendencies. Fancy words that basically mean I'm broken in ways I didn't even understand. They're trying to help me. I'm trying to let them. I'm not writing this to make excuses. There are no excuses for what I did. I'm writing because I need you to know that you were right to leave. You were right to run, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. I hope you find happiness. Real happiness. The kind I was never capable of giving you. You deserve that. You always did. Elena read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it up, walked to the bathroom, and flushed it down the toilet. She didn't need his apology, didn't need his explanations or his diagnoses or his hopes for her future. What she needed was to move forward, to build something new. And that's exactly what she was going to do. The next morning, she knocked on Marcus's office door. I want to start today, she said. Whatever you need me to do, filing, phone calls, research, I want to start learning how to help. Marcus looked up from his computer. For a long moment, he just studied her face. Then he smiled. Grab a chair, he said. We've got work to do. 6 months changed everything. Elena barely recognized herself anymore. The woman who had stumbled into Marcus's garage, bruised and broken and terrified, felt like a stranger now. Someone from another life, another world. She still had bad days, still woke up sometimes with her heart pounding, reaching for a throat that wasn't being squeezed. Still flinched at loud noises and checked the locks 3 times before bed. But the bad days were getting fewer. The good days were getting longer. And somewhere along the way, she'd stopped just surviving and started actually living. The garage had transformed too. What used to be a back storage room was now a small office with 2 desks, a filing cabinet, and a phone that rang constantly. They'd painted the walls a soft blue Tommy's idea, something about calming colors, and hung a sign on the door that said, Second Chances. It wasn't an official organization. Not yet. They didn't have nonprofit status or government funding or any of the things Grace said they'd eventually need. What they had was simpler: a phone number that women could call, a safe place to wait while Grace arranged shelter, a network of people willing to help. In 6 months, they'd helped 23 women, 23 stories of fear and pain and courage. 23 women who had walked through that door looking for a way out and found one. Some stayed in touch. Some disappeared into new lives, new cities, new names. Elena understood. Sometimes starting over meant leaving everything behind. Jessica had been the first, but not the last. There was Maria, who showed up with 2 kids and a black eye. Sarah, who'd been married for 30 years to a man everyone in town thought was a saint. Keisha, who was 19 and pregnant and convinced that no one would believe her because her boyfriend was a cop. Elena believed all of them. That was the thing she learned. The thing no one told you until you'd lived it. Survivors could spot each other, could recognize the fear, the shame, the desperate hope in another woman's eyes. And that recognition, that simple acknowledgement of shared pain, was sometimes enough to save a life. You're getting good at this, Grace said one afternoon, watching Elena talk a terrified woman through her options over the phone. Elena covered the receiver. I had good teachers. You had trauma. You turned it into purpose. That's not teaching, that's transformation. The words stuck with Elena long after Grace left. Transformation. Is that what this was? She didn't feel transformed. She felt like the same scared girl who'd run from Derek, just with better coping skills and a phone number people could call. But maybe that was enough. Maybe transformation didn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it could be quiet, gradual, one day at a time, one woman at a time. The phone rang again. Second chances, this is Elena. Was silence on the other end. Then a shaky breath. I, I don't know if I'm calling the right place. If you're scared, Elena said gently, you're calling the right place. Take your time. I'm listening. Marcus watched from the doorway, a cup of coffee in his hand. He didn't interrupt. Never did. Just stood there like a silent guardian, ready to step in if needed, but trusting Elena to handle it. When the call ended, another woman, another story, another life about to change. Elena hung up and let out a long breath. That's for today, she said, words getting out. Maybe too fast. We don't have the resources for this, Marcus. Grace is stretched thin. The shelter's full, and we can't keep housing people in the apartment upstairs forever. Marcus set down his coffee and sat across from her. Then we get more resources. How? We're not a real organization. We don't have funding. We have a reputation. We have results. We have 23 women who got out because of what we built here. He leaned forward. That's worth something, Elena. That's worth a lot. Worth what? Good feelings, because good feelings don't pay rent or buy groceries, or worth a meeting with the community foundation. Elena stared at him. What? Got a call this morning. Someone on their board heard about what we're doing, wants to meet, talk about making this official, giving us real funding. Marcus, Elena's voice came out strangled. Why didn't you lead with that? Wanted to see how long it took you to figure out we needed help. A rare smile crossed his face. About 30 seconds. Not bad. Elena threw a pen at him. He caught it without flinching. When's the meeting? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. downtown. Tomorrow, 20 hours to prepare for a meeting that could change everything. Elena's stomach churned with a mix of excitement and terror. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to ask people for money. I don't know how to make presentations or talk about impact metrics or any of the things foundations care about. Neither do I, Marcus shrugged. But Grace does, and she's meeting us there. You already planned this, all of it. I planned the meeting, the panic attack you're having right now. That was all you. Elena laughed despite herself. It was still strange laughing with Marcus. Strange but good, like something that had been frozen for a long time was finally starting to thaw. Okay, she said, squaring her shoulders. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Let's do this. The community foundation offices were nothing like Elena expected. She'd imagined something cold and corporate, all glass walls and uncomfortable chairs. Instead, she found herself in a warm room with wooden floors and soft lighting, facing three people who actually seemed to care about what she had to say. Margaret Chen, no relation to Grace or Officer Chen, just one of those small-town coincidences, was the board chair. She was 70 if she was a day, with white hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Tell me about the woman who changed everything for you, Margaret said, cutting through Elena's rehearsed presentation. Not the statistics, the person. Elena glanced at Marcus, then at Grace. Both nodded encouragingly. Her name was Jessica, Elena began. She walked into the diner where I work about 5 months ago, bruise on her cheek, scared to make eye contact, moving like she expected to be hit at any moment. How did you know she needed help? Because I used to move the same way. Margaret's expression softened. Go on. Elena told Jessica's story, then Maria's, then Sarah's and Keisha's, and all the others. She talked about the phone calls that came at 3 a.m., the women who showed up with nothing but the clothes on their backs, the children who didn't understand why mommy was crying but knew enough to be afraid. She talked about Marcus and his garage, about Grace and her endless patience, about the network they'd built from nothing phone trees and safe houses and volunteers who dropped everything when they got the call. And she talked about what they needed: space, staff, funding for legal assistance and emergency housing, and the 1,000 small things that made the difference between escape and returning to danger. When she finished, the room was silent. Margaret looked at her colleagues. Something passed between them, a nonia, a slight gesture. Then she turned back to Elena. How much? Elena's throat went dry. They'd rehearsed this part, but suddenly the number seemed impossible. Too big, too presumptuous. 50,000, Grace said smoothly, stepping in. To start, that covers a year of operations, one full-time staff position, and emergency funds for housing assistance. Margaret didn't blink. And if we gave you 100,000, Elena's heart stopped. Then we could hire 2 staff members. Grace continued, barely missing a beat. Expand our housing network. Partner with the women's shelter in the next county. Triple our capacity. Good, Margaret smiled, because that's what we're prepared to offer. Pending board approval, of course, but I don't anticipate any problems. Elena couldn't speak, couldn't think. $100,000. More money than she'd seen in her entire life, and it was going to help women like her. Women who had nowhere to turn. Women who thought they were alone. Thank you, she managed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll make it count. Margaret stood and extended her hand. I've been doing this work for 40 years, Elena. I know passion when I see it. I know dedication. And I know what happens when someone who's lived through hell decides to help others find their way out. She squeezed Elena's hand. You're going to change lives. Probably already have. Now you'll just be able to change more of them. Outside the foundation offices, Elena stood on the sidewalk and burst into tears. Marcus hovered awkwardly, clearly unsure what to do. Grace just pulled her into a hug and let her cry. I can't believe it, Elena kept saying. I can't believe this is real. Believe it, Grace said. You earned this. Every late night, every phone call, every woman you sat with while she figured out her next step. This is the result. This is just the beginning, Marcus added. Now the real work starts. He was right, of course. The funding was just money. What mattered was what they did with it. The lives they touched, the women they helped, the cycle of violence they could break one person at a time. But standing there with the sun on her face and her heart full of something she barely recognized as hope, Elena allowed herself a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. She'd come so far, and she was just getting started. 3 months after the foundation meeting, Second Chances moved into a real office. It wasn't much, a converted storefront on Main Street, 2 blocks from Rose's Diner, but it had a waiting area and 2 private offices and a conference room where they could hold group sessions. Elena had spent a week painting the walls and hanging curtains and making it feel like a home instead of a clinic. Ruby handled the business side of things with the same terrifying efficiency she brought to the garage. They had an accountant now and a lawyer who worked pro bono, and a list of volunteers that grew longer every week. Grace had officially come on board as director. Elena's title was Community Outreach Coordinator, which basically meant she did everything from answering phones to holding hands to occasionally talking sense into women who wanted to go back. That was the hardest part, the ones who went back. You can't save everyone, Grace told her after a woman named Linda returned to her husband for the 3rd time. Some people aren't ready. Some people won't ever be ready. All you can do is keep the door open. How do you not take it personally? Who says I don't? Grace's smile was sad. I take every single one of them personally. I cry in my car. I pray for them at night. And then I get up the next morning and do it again because the alternative is giving up. And I'm not built for giving up. Neither was Elena. Not anymore. Marcus had stepped back from the day-to-day operations, but he was still there. Still a silent presence in the background, still ready to show up whenever someone needed an escort to court or a visible reminder that not all dangerous-looking men were dangerous in the wrong ways. The club helped too. Not officially, the Hells Angels had a reputation to maintain, but quietly. A woman needed to move across town in the middle of the night. There was always a truck available. Someone's ex was making threats. A couple of leather-vested bikers would happen to be hanging around wherever she worked. It wasn't legal, probably. Definitely wasn't professional. But it worked. And in this business, what worked was what mattered. The phone rang one evening just as Elena was getting ready to close up. Second Chances, this is Elena. Silence, then a voice she hadn't heard in almost a year. Elena, it's me, Derek. Her blood turned to ice. How did you get this number? It's not hard to find. You're doing good work. I've been following what you're doing from a distance. Elena's hand tightened on the receiver. You're not supposed to contact me. The protective order. I know, and I'm not calling to To do anything. I just wanted to say something. Can you give me 1 minute? Just 1 minute, and then I'll hang up and never contact you again. Every instinct told her to hang up, to call Officer Chen, to do anything except listen to the man who had once tried to kill her. But something held her there, some curiosity she couldn't name. 1 minute, she said. Derek took a shaky breath. I got out 3 months ago, the facility. I've been in outpatient treatment ever since. Therapy twice a week, medication, support groups, all of it. Good for you. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I want you to know that I'm different. Not fixed, the doctors say I'll never be fixed. But different. Aware. I understand now what I did to you. Really understand. Elena said nothing. I read an article about second chances, Derek continued, about what you're building, about the women you're helping, and I needed you to know that I'm proud of you, that what you're doing matters, that you're turning something terrible into something beautiful. You don't get to be proud of me. Elena's voice was flat. You don't get to feel anything about my life. You gave up that right when you put your hands around my throat. I know, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. His voice cracked. I just wanted you to know that some part of what happened, some small, terrible part, led to something good. And I'm grateful, even though I don't deserve to be. The line went quiet. Elena should hang up. She knew she should hang up. Are you getting better? She asked instead. Really better. I think so. Some days. Other days I feel like I'm holding on by my fingernails. A pause. I'm not going to hurt anyone else, Elena. Not ever again. That's the one thing I can promise you. Promises don't mean much to me anymore. No, I don't suppose they would. Silence stretched between them. A year of pain and fear and slowly rebuilding compressed into a single phone call. I'm going to hang up now, Elena said. Okay. And I don't want you to call again. Ever. I won't. But Derek, yeah. I hope you make it. I really do. She hung up before he could respond. For a long time, she just sat there staring at the phone. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. But underneath the fear, underneath the anger, there was something else. Closure. Not forgiveness. She would never forgive him for what he'd done. But maybe she could finally stop carrying it. Stop letting his ghost live rent-free in her head. Stop being defined by the worst thing that ever happened to her. She was more than a victim. She was more than a survivor. She was someone who had taken her strain and built something that mattered. The door opened behind her. Elena, Marcus's voice concerned. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I talked to one, she said, but I think I just finished exorcising it. Marcus sat down across from her. He didn't ask questions, didn't push, just sat there solid and steady the way he always did. Thank you, Elena said after a while. For what? For being here, for always being here, for not asking questions when I don't want to answer them. You'd do the same for me. Would I? Marcus smiled, that rare transformative smile that changed his whole face. Yeah, you would. You do. Elena felt something shift in her chest, something that had been building for months, maybe longer. Something she'd been afraid to name because naming it made it real, and real things could hurt you. But real things could also save you. Marcus? Yeah, can I ask you something? Depends on what it is. What are we? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. What do you want us to be? Elena considered the question, really considered it for maybe the first time. I don't know, she admitted. I know I trust you. I know I feel safe with you. I know that when something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. And when something bad happens, you're the first person I want to see. That sounds like something. It sounds like more than something. She took a deep breath. But I'm scared. I'm scared that if we try to be more and it doesn't work, I'll lose the best thing that's happened to me since this whole nightmare began. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I'm scared too. You're not scared of anything. I'm scared of hurting you. Scared of becoming someone you need to escape from. Scared that whatever darkness is in me, The same darkness that killed Maria's husband is just waiting for the right trigger. You're not him. You're nothing like him. How do you know? Because he hurt people to control them. You hurt people to protect them. That's not the same thing. It's not even close. Marcus looked at her. Really looked the way he'd looked at her that first day in the alley. Like he was seeing past all her defenses to the person underneath. I'm not good at this, he said finally. Relationships, feelings. The whole thing. I've been alone for a long time and I got used to it. Got comfortable with it. I'm not asking for comfortable. I'm asking for honest. Honest, he laughed low and rough. Honestly, Elena, you're the first person in 15 years who's made me want to tree my, who's made me think maybe I'm not just a man who did a terrible thing. Maybe I'm someone who can do good things too. You do good things every day. Because of you, because you showed up and made me remember why any of this matters. Elena reached across the desk and took his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, scarred from decades of hard work. But they were gentle when they wrapped around hers. Maybe we take it slow, she said. See where this goes. No pressure, no expectations. I can do slow. And if it doesn't work out, we stay friends, partners, whatever we are now. Deal. They sat their hands intertwined as the evening light faded and the office grew dim. Neither of them moved to turn on a lamp. Neither of them wanted to break the spell. I should probably go home, Elena said finally. Probably. Early day tomorrow. Yeah, but still she didn't move, and neither did he. Marcus? Yeah. I'm glad you stopped that day, in the alley. Me too. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Me too. The next morning, everything was different. Nothing had changed. They still worked together, still maintained appropriate boundaries, still kept their relationship professional in front of volunteers and clients. But underneath it all, there was something new, a current running between them, a promise of possibilities yet to come. Elena threw herself into work. They had more funding now, more staff, more demand than they could handle. The phone rang constantly. Women showed up at all hours. Every day brought new stories of courage and fear and desperate hope. And every night when the office closed and the volunteers went home, Elena and Marcus sat together in the quiet, talking, laughing, slowly learning how to be something more than partners. It wasn't a fairy tale. They fought sometimes. Marcus's walls went up when things got too intense. Elena's anxiety spiked when plans changed without warning. They were two broken people trying to build something whole, and that was messy and complicated and harder than either of them expected. But it was also real. And real Elena was learning was worth fighting for. 8 months after Second Chances opened its doors, the mayor called. We want to honor you, she said, at the annual Community Heroes Ceremony. You and your team, for the work you've done. Elena almost laughed. Her community hero. She was just a woman who'd survived something terrible and decided to help others do the same. There was nothing heroic about it. But then she thought about Maria, who had gotten her GED last month. About Sarah, who had left her abusive husband after 30 years and was finally learning who she was. About Keisha, whose baby was now 6 months old and thriving. Maybe heroism wasn't about doing something extraordinary. Maybe it was just about showing up. Every day. Even when it was hard. Even when you wanted to quit. I'd be honored, Elena said. She hung up the phone and looked around the office. At the blue walls Tommy had suggested. At the filing cabinet full of success stories. At the window where the afternoon light made everything glow gold. A year ago, she'd been choking in an alley convinced she was going to die. Now she was being honored for saving lives. The journey from there to here felt impossible. Miraculous. Like something that happened to other people, not to her. But it had happened to her, and it was just the beginning. The ceremony was 2 weeks away when everything fell apart. Elena was at her desk reviewing case files when Ruby burst through the door. Her face was white, her hands were shaking. Turn on the news, Ruby said. Now. Elena grabbed the remote and clicked on the small television they kept in the corner. A news anchor was speaking, her face grave. Authorities have confirmed that Derek Mitchell, convicted of assault and attempted strangulation, escaped from the Brookside Psychiatric Facility early this morning. Mitchell, 29, was serving an 18-month sentence after attacking his former girlfriend. Elena stopped hearing the words. Derek was out. Derek was free. Derek was coming for her. The phone rang. Elena jumped so hard, she knocked over her coffee cup, sending brown liquid spreading across her desk. Elena, Marcus's voice urgent. You heard. I'm watching it now. Stay where you are. I'm 5 minutes away. Don't move. Don't let anyone in. Don't. Marcus, I know the protocol. This isn't protocol. This is Derek. This is personal. He was right. All the protocols they developed, all the safety measures they'd put in place, none of them had accounted for this. For the man who had started it all coming back to finish what he'd begun. I'll be fine, Elena said, but her voice was shaking. I'll be fine. She wasn't fine. By the time Marcus arrived, she'd checked the lock 17 times and moved the emergency phone to within arm's reach. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Every sound made her flinch, the wind against the window, a car door slamming outside, footsteps on the sidewalk. Hey, Marcus's voice was gentle as he walked through the door. Hey, look at me. Elena looked. His face was calm, but his eyes were blazing. He's not going to touch you, Marcus said. Not while I'm breathing. You can't be with me every second. Watch me. Marcus. No. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took her hands in his. Listen to me. I failed my sister. I wasn't there when she needed me. I'm not making that mistake again. Not with you, not ever. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that he couldn't save her, that no one could, that some things were just inevitable. But the words died in her throat when she saw his face. He was terrified, not for himself, for her. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The next 48 hours were a blur. Officer Chen coordinated with the state police, putting out an APB on Derek. Grace mobilized the network, warning every woman they had helped to be on alert. Marcus called in favors from the club, and suddenly there were bikers everywhere, outside the office, outside Elena's apartment, outside Rosa's diner. It wasn't subtle, but it was effective. The whole town knew what was happening. Elena couldn't walk down the street without someone asking if she was okay, offering help, promising to keep an eye out. She'd spent so long feeling alone, feeling like no one understood. Now she was surrounded by a community that had her back. It was overwhelming. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. Because Derek was still out there, still planning, still getting angrier by the hour. He's smart, Officer Chen said during their daily briefing. He's not using credit cards. He's not going anywhere we'd expect. He's staying off the grid. So what do? We wait, we stay vigilant, and we hope he makes a mistake before he finds you. Hope. Elena was tired of hope. She wanted certainty. She wanted this to be over. But certainty was a luxury she couldn't afford. On the 3rd night, Elena's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She shouldn't answer. She knew she shouldn't answer, but something made her pick it up anyway. Hello, breathing on the other end, heavy, familiar. I know where you are. Derek's voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that came before an explosion. Derek, don't do this. I'm not going to hurt you, Elena. I just want to talk. That's all I've ever wanted, to talk to you, to make you understand. There's nothing to understand. You need help. Please just turn yourself in. Turn myself in. He laughed and the sounds made her skin crawl. So they can lock me up again, pump me full of drugs, tell me I'm broken, that I'll never be fixed, that I should just accept being a monster. You're not a monster. You're sick. There's a difference. Is there? Because I don't feel sick. I feel clear, clearer than I've felt in months. His voice dropped. I know what I have to do now. I know how this ends. How does it end, Derek? Silence. Long, terrible silence. One way or another, he said finally, it ends tonight. The line went dead. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely dial Marcus's number. He called me, she said when he picked up. He knows where I am. He said it ends tonight. Stay inside, lock the doors. I'm on my way. Marcus, I'm on my way. He hung up before she could say anything else. Elena did as she was told. Locked the doors, closed the blinds, grabbed the baseball bat Marcus had given her months ago, back when this was all just a precaution instead of a reality. Then she sat in the dark and waited. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Elena couldn't tell. Time had stopped meaning anything. A knock at the door made her jump to her feet, bat raised. "Elena, it's me." Marcus's voice. Thank God. She unlocked the door and let him in. He was wearing his leather vest, and there was something hard and cold in his eyes that she'd never seen before. "He's here," Marcus said, "somewhere close." The boy spotted his car 3 blocks away. "What do? We end this." "Marcus, no, we should call the police. We should—" "The police are 20 minutes away. Derek's here now." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I'm not going to kill him, Elena. I'm not that man anymore. But I am going to make sure he never hurts you again." "How?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. A crash from the back of the building made them both spin around. "He's inside," Marcus said. "Stay behind me. I'm not hiding." "Elena." "I said I'm not hiding." She gripped the bat tighter. "This is my fight too. It's always been my fight." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Pride maybe, or fear, or both. "Okay," he said. "Together, then." They moved through the dark office step by careful step. Elena's heart was pounding so loud she was sure Derek could hear it. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound was a potential ambush. They found him in the conference room. He was standing by the window, his back to them. His shoulders were slumped, his head bowed. He looked smaller than Elena remembered. Defeated. "I knew you'd come," Derek said without turning around. "Both of you, the beauty and the beast, the victim and the hero." "It doesn't have to be like this," Elena said. "You can still turn yourself in. You can still get help." "Help?" Derek laughed bitterly. "You know what they did to me in that place? The drugs, the therapy, the endless talking about feelings I don't understand and can't control. They didn't help me. They just taught me how to pretend better. Then try somewhere else. Try different doctors. Try—" "There is no trying." Derek finally turned around and Elena saw the gun in his hand. "There's only ending." Marcus stepped forward, putting himself between Elena and the weapon. "Put it down, Derek." "Stay back." Derek's hand was shaking, the gun wavering. "I'm not here to hurt her. I'm here to what?" Tears were streaming down Derek's face. I don't know anymore. I just wanted to see her one more time. Wanted to remember what it felt like to be loved." "I never loved you." Elena's voice was steady even as her heart broke. "I thought I did. But love doesn't hurt like you hurt me. Love doesn't control and manipulate and choke. Whatever we had, Derek, it wasn't love." "Then what was it?" "Fear, obligation, habit. I stayed because I was afraid to leave. And when I finally found the courage, you tried to kill me." "I didn't mean to." "That's what you always said. You never meant to hit me, never meant to bruise me, never meant to wrap your hands around my throat and squeeze. But you did, every time. And the fact that you didn't mean to doesn't make it hurt any less." Derek's gun hand dropped slightly. "I'm sorry. I know. I'm so tired." "I know, Derek. But sorry doesn't fix anything. Sorry doesn't erase what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back the years I spent being afraid." "Then what does—" Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment, the one she'd been building toward without even realizing it. "Letting go," she said. "For both of us, you have to let go of me, Derek, and I have to let go of being your victim. I can't. I don't know how. Neither did I, but I learned, and you can too." She stepped around Marcus, ignoring his grab for her arm. "Put down the gun, please. Not for me, for yourself. Because the person you're hurting most right now isn't me or Marcus. It's you." Derek stared at her. The gun trembled in his hand. "They'll put me away," he whispered. "For years this time. Maybe forever. Maybe, but at least you'll be alive. At least you'll have a chance to become someone different, someone better." "What if I can't?" "Then at least you'll have tried." The silence stretched out. Elena could hear her own heartbeat, Marcus's breathing, the distant sound of sirens getting closer. Derek looked at the gun in his hand, then at Elena, then at the gun again. "I never deserved you," he said quietly. "No, you didn't." He set the gun on the table, and then his knees buckled, and he collapsed to the floor sobbing. Marcus moved fast, kicking the gun away and restraining Derek with practiced efficiency. But there was no struggle. Derek was done fighting, done running. Done with all of it. The police arrived 3 minutes later. They found Derek on the floor, hands already secured behind his back. They found Elena standing by the window staring at nothing. They found Marcus watching over both of them like a guardian angel with tattoos and a leather vest. Officer Chen was the first through the door. "Everyone okay?" "Yeah." Elena's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Distant. Hollow. "Yeah, we're okay." "How did you—" "He gave up. Just gave up." Officer Chen looked at Derek, then at Elena, then at Marcus. Something passed between the two women, an understanding that went beyond words. "I'll need statements from both of you," she said finally, "but it can wait until morning." Elena nodded. The officers led Derek away. He didn't look back, didn't say anything. Just walked out the door and out of Elena's life, maybe forever this time. When they were finally alone, Elena turned to Marcus. "It's over," she said. "It's really over." "Yeah." He pulled her into his arms and she let herself be held. "It's over. I was so scared." "I know. But I did it anyway." "Yeah." His voice was rough. "You did. You were incredible." Elena pulled back just enough to look at his face. In the dim light, he looked older somehow. Tired, but also peaceful in a way she'd never seen before. "Thank you," she said, "for being here, for always being here. Nowhere else I'd rather be." She stood on her toes and kissed him. It was their first real kiss, soft and tentative and perfect. When she pulled back, Marcus was smiling. "What was that for? For being you. For showing me that not all strength is violent, that some of it is quiet and patient and shows up when you need it most." "Elena, I love you." The words came out before she could stop them, before she could second-guess herself or talk herself out of it. Marcus's eyes widened. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then, "I love you too." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. They weren't going to ride off into the sunset on his motorcycle and live happily ever after. Life didn't work that way. But it was a beginning, a real one. Two broken people who had found each other in the darkness and decided to walk toward the light together. And for now, that was enough. A week later, Elena stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her apartment trying to decide what to wear to the ceremony. Her hands were steady now. Her sleep had improved. The nightmares hadn't disappeared completely, but they came less often, and when they did, she knew how to handle them. Derek was in custody awaiting trial. His lawyers were talking about an insanity plea. Elena didn't care. Whatever happened to him, it was out of her hands. She'd done what she could, offered him a chance to surrender, a chance to change. What he did with that chance was up to him. "You ready?" Marcus's voice came from the other room. "Almost." She looked at herself in the mirror, really looked, at the woman who had survived so much, who had built something meaningful from the wreckage of her life, who had learned to love again despite everything. She smiled. "Okay," she said, walking out to where Marcus was waiting. "Let's go." The town hall was packed. Elena had expected a small ceremony, a few speeches, maybe a plaque or two. Instead, she found rows and rows of faces. Some she recognized, women from the support group, volunteer staff. Some she didn't, strangers who had heard about second chances and wanted to show their support. Grace was already on stage, looking elegant in a navy dress that matched her calm demeanor. Tommy was there in an actual suit, tugging at his collar like it was trying to strangle him. Ruby sat in the front row, already crying. And Marcus was right beside her. Where he always was, where he always would be. The mayor called their names and they walked to the stage together. The applause was thunderous, overwhelming. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes as she looked out at the crowd. All these people, all this support for what she'd built, for what they'd built. When the mayor handed her the microphone, Elena's mind went blank. She'd prepared a speech, Grace had helped her write it, but suddenly the words seemed inadequate. So she spoke from the heart instead. "A year and a half ago," she began, "I was dying in an alley. A man I thought loved me had his hands around my throat, and I was sure that was how it would end, that my story would be just another headline, another statistic, another woman who didn't make it out." She paused, looking at Marcus, but someone stopped. Someone who had every reason to walk past to mind his own business, to decide it wasn't his problem. He stopped anyway, and that's when I learned the most important lesson of my life. She turned back to the crowd. We don't have to do this alone. Any of it. We don't have to suffer in silence or hide our pain or pretend everything's fine when it isn't. There are people who will stand with us, who will fight for us, who will love us even when we can't love ourselves. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. Second chances exist because of that lesson, because I wanted other women, other people to know that there's always hope, always a way out, always someone who cares. She held up the plaque they'd given her. This isn't my award. It belongs to every woman who had the courage to walk through our door, every volunteer who answered a midnight phone call, every survivor who refused to give up. She looked at Marcus again. And it belongs to a biker named Marcus who showed me that the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who keep getting back up. The applause was deafening. Elena stepped back from the microphone and Marcus stepped forward. His speech was shorter, just one line. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to say enough. Elena taught me that courage isn't about crushing someone. It's about helping others stand up. The crowd rose to their feet. Afterward, people surrounded them with handshakes and hugs and tearful congratulations. Lena lost count of how many thank yous she received, how many stories were shared, how many promises were made to keep supporting the work. It was overwhelming, beautiful, exhausting. Finally, around 9 o'clock, she and Marcus slipped away. They walked through the quiet streets hand in hand, not talking. They didn't need to. Everything that needed to be said had already been said in words and actions and quiet moments over the past year. They ended up at the park, the same park where they'd sat so many evenings watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. It was dark now, but the streetlights cast a gentle glow over the path. "Hell of a night," Marcus said. "Hell of a year." "Any regrets?" Elena considered the question. A year ago, she would have had 1,000 regrets, a million things she wished she'd done differently. "Now, no," she said. "Not one. Not even the parts that hurt. Especially not those. The pain made me who I am, taught me what I'm capable of, led me to you." Marcus squeezed her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, about the future, about what comes next." Elena's heart skipped. And I think." He stopped walking, turned to face her. In the dim light, his face was serious, vulnerable. "I think I want to spend the rest of it with you. The future, I mean. All of it." "Marcus, I know I'm not easy. I know I've got baggage and scars and a past that would scare most people away. But you didn't run. You stayed. And I don't want to waste another day not telling you what that means to me." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Happy tears this time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, what I didn't ask a question. Yes to whatever you're going to ask yes to the future. Yes to you." Marcus laughed, a real laugh, full and warm. "You're supposed to wait until I actually propose. Then hurry up and propose." He didn't have a ring, didn't get down on one knee, just stood there holding her hands, his eyes bright. "Elena Morrison," he said, "will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, 1,000 times yes. He kissed her then, and the world fell away. All the pain, all the fear, all the darkness, it was still there. It would always be there, a part of who they were. But so was the light. And tonight, standing in the park where their story had truly begun, the light was winning. 2 years changed everything. Elena stood at the window of the new Second Chances building, watching volunteers carry boxes through the front door. 3 stories, 12 offices, a residential wing with room for 20 women and their children, a legal clinic, a counseling center, a job training program. It still didn't feel real. "You're doing that thing again," Grace said from behind her. "What thing?" "The thing where you stare at something amazing and refuse to believe you had anything to do with it." Elena turned around. Grace was smiling, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I didn't do this alone. No one does anything alone. But you started it. You kept it going when everyone said it was impossible. And now," Grace gestured at the building around them, "now look at us." Elena took the coffee and let herself look. Really look. The walls were covered with photographs. Women who had walked through their doors over the past 2 years. Some smiling, some serious, all of them survivors. Maria with her GED certificate, Sarah at her new job, Keisha with her daughter on her first day of kindergarten, Jessica, the first one, the one who had started Elena on this path at her college graduation. 247 women, 247 lives changed, 247 stories of courage and resilience and hope. The governor's office called again, Grace said. They want you to speak at the state capitol next month. Something about domestic violence awareness legislation. I'm not a politician. No, you're something better. You're a survivor, and your voice carries weight that politicians can only dream of. Elena sighed. 2 years ago, she couldn't have imagined speaking in front of anyone. Now she gave presentations, testified at hearings, did interviews with reporters who wanted to tell her story. She'd become a symbol. Some days that felt like an honor. Other days it felt like a burden. I'll think about it, she said. You'll say yes, Grace replied, because you know it matters, because every time you stand up and tell your story, someone watching realizes they're not alone. Elena couldn't argue with that. The front door opened and Marcus walked in carrying a box that looked too heavy for one person. He wasn't even breathing hard. Last one, he said, setting it down. That's everything from the old office. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank the volunteers. I'm just the muscle. Elena walked over and kissed him. 2 years of marriage hadn't dimmed the spark between them. If anything, it had grown stronger. You're more than muscle, she said. Am I? You're also extremely good at making coffee. Marcus laughed. It was a sound Elena never got tired of hearing, deep and warm and full of life. I'll go make some now, he said. The volunteers look like they need it. He headed toward the kitchen and Elena watched him go. Still strong, still steady, still the man who had saved her life in an alley and then spent every day since helping her build a new one. Her phone buzzed. A text from Officer Chen. Trial verdict in, guilty on all counts. 15 years. Elena read the message 3 times before it sank in. Derek. After 2 years of delays and continuances in legal maneuvering, it was finally over. He'd been found guilty. He was going to prison. For real this time. For good. She showed the message to Grace. How do you feel? Grace asked. Elena considered the question. She'd expected relief, triumph, maybe even joy. Instead, she felt nothing. Or not nothing exactly. More like closure. Like a door that had been left open for too long was finally clicking shut. I feel finished, she said, and like that chapter is really and truly over. In the next chapter, Elena looked around at the building, at the women they were helping, at the life she'd built from the wreckage of the one Derek had tried to destroy. The next chapter is already being written. The grand opening ceremony was scheduled for that weekend. Elena spent the days leading up to it in a constant state of controlled chaos. There were speeches to finalize donors, to thank media requests to manage. Ruby handled most of the logistics with her usual terrifying efficiency, but there were some things only Elena could do, like visiting Maria. Maria had been one of their first clients, a woman who showed up with 2 kids and a black eye, convinced that she had nowhere to go. Now she was the office manager for Second Chances, her children thriving in the local school, her life completely transformed. You nervous? Maria asked, watching Elena pace. Terrified. About what you've done 100 speeches. This one's different. This is, Elena struggled to find the words. This is everything we've worked for. If I mess it up, you won't mess it up. And even if you did, it wouldn't matter. The building would still be here. The programs would still work. The women we help would still get help. But the donors aren't giving money because you give good speeches. They're giving money because they believe in what we do, because they've seen the results. Maria stood and put her hands on Elena's shoulders. You changed my life. You changed hundreds of lives. One speech isn't going to undo that. Elena took a deep breath. When did you get so wise? About 5 minutes after I stopped letting fear run my life. Maria smiled. Learned that from you, actually. The night before the ceremony, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Marcus breathe beside her. Her mind was racing with everything that could go wrong, everything she might forget to say, everything that might fall apart at the last minute. You're thinking too loud, Marcus mumbled, without opening his eyes. Sorry. Don't be sorry, just tell me what's going on. Elena rolled onto her side to face him. In the darkness, she could barely make out his features, but she knew them by heart. "What if I'm not enough?" she whispered. "What if all of this, the building of the programs, everything, what if it all falls apart because I'm not smart enough or experienced enough or, Elena, or strong enough to keep it going? What if I'm just pretending to be something I'm not, and eventually everyone figures out that I'm still just that scared girl from the alley who, Elena," Marcus's voice was firmer now. He propped himself up on one elbow. "Look at me." She looked. "You are enough," he said. "You've always been enough, the scared girl from the alley. She's still part of you. But so is the woman who built an organization from nothing. The woman who speaks at conferences and testifies at hearings and holds the hands of survivors at 3 in the morning. But what if? No, no more what ifs. You've spent 2 years proving that you can do this. 2 years of evidence that you're exactly the person this work needs." He reached out and touched her face. "The only one who doesn't see it is you." Elena felt tears prick at her eyes. "I'm so tired of being afraid." "I know, but fear isn't your enemy. It's what you do with it that matters. And you've been turning fear into courage since the day I met you." She leaned forward and kissed him. Soft, grateful. "I love you. I love you too. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow's a big day." Elena closed her eyes. For the first time in weeks, her mind was quiet. She slept. The ceremony was perfect, or as close to perfect as anything could be. There were minor hiccups, a microphone that cut out a donor who got lost on the way to the bathroom, a child who knocked over a display, but nothing that mattered. What mattered was the ribbon cutting, the speeches, the tour of the new facility, the faces of the women who walked through the doors and saw for the first time a place that was built specifically for them. Elena gave her speech without notes. She told her story, the alley, the rescue, the long road to recovery. She talked about Marcus and Grace and everyone who had helped along the way. She talked about the women they'd served and the lives they'd changed. And she talked about what came next. "This building is not a destination," she said, looking out at the crowd. "It's a beginning, a starting point for something bigger than any of us. Because domestic violence doesn't just hurt individuals, it hurts families, communities, society as a whole, and ending it requires all of us working together." She paused, gathering herself. "I used to think I was alone, that no one could understand what I was going through, that I would never feel safe again." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. "I was wrong. There are people who understand. There are people who care, and there are places like this one where safety isn't just a dream, it's a reality." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Elena was swarmed with well-wishers, donors, politicians, reporters, survivors. Everyone wanted a piece of her, a moment of her time, a quote for their story. It was exhausting, exhilarating. Everything she'd worked for compressed into a single overwhelming day. Around 4 o'clock, she slipped away for a quiet moment in her new office. She needed to breathe, to process, to remember why she was doing this in the first place. A knock at the door interrupted her solitude. "Come in." The door opened and a woman stepped through. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and nervous eyes. She was dressed nicely, like she'd made an effort, but there was something familiar about the way she held herself. Careful, watchful, ready to flinch. Elena knew that posture. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said. "I know you're busy. I needed to meet you, to thank you." "Thank me. Do we know each other?" "No, but you know someone I love." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My mother, her name is Linda, Linda Patterson." Elena's heart stopped. Linda, the woman who had gone back to her husband 3 times, the one Grace said they couldn't save, the one Elena still thought about late at night, wondering if there was something more she could have done. "Linda is—" Elena couldn't finish the sentence. "She's okay." The woman, Linda's daughter, smiled through her tears. "She finally left him, 6 months ago, for good this time." "I didn't know." She was ashamed to come back here. After everything, she thought you'd judge her, thought she'd wasted her chances. The woman stepped closer, "But she never stopped talking about you, about this place, about the people who believed in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. Elena felt tears streaming down her own face. Where is she now? Outside. She wanted to come in, but she was too nervous. Said she couldn't face you after all the times she'd let you down. She never let me down. Elena stood. Take me to her. Linda was standing by the fountain in front of the building, looking small and scared, and exactly like Elena remembered. When she saw Elena coming, she started to back away. Elena, I'm so sorry. I know I wasted your time. I know I kept going back when I should have stayed gone. I know. Elena pulled her into a hug. You're here now, she said. That's all that matters. Linda broke down sobbing. Her daughter joined the embrace, and the three of them stood there holding each other, crying and laughing, and sharing a moment that no one else could understand. I thought you'd hate me, Linda whispered. Never, not once, not ever. But I kept going back. And you kept leaving, every time you left again. That takes more courage than people realize. Elena pulled back to look at Linda's face. You're not a failure. You're a survivor. And I'm so proud of you. Linda's tears fell harder. I want to help. I want to give back somehow. I don't have money, but I have time. I have experience. You have a story, Elena said, and stories are the most powerful thing we have. Would you be willing to share yours with who? With other women. Women who are where you were, women who are thinking about going back. Women who need to hear that it's never too late to leave for good. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Yes, I'll do it. Elena smiled. Welcome to Second Chances. That night, Elena and Marcus sat on the roof of the new building, watching the sunset. It had become their tradition, finding quiet moments in the chaos, reconnecting in the spaces between obligations. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they just sat holding hands, letting the silence speak for itself. Tonight, though, Elena had something to say. I've been thinking about the future. Always a dangerous pastime. I'm serious, she turned to face him. We've built something incredible here. Something that's going to outlast both of us. But I keep wondering what comes next for us, for our family. Marcus went very still. Our family. I know we talked about it years ago, decided we weren't sure, that maybe it wasn't the right time or the right circumstances or… Elena took a breath. But I'm sure now. I want to be a mother. I want to have a child with you. The silence stretched out. Elena's heart pounded. Say something, she whispered. Marcus turned to look at her. His eyes were bright. I've wanted that for so long, he said, his voice rough. Wanted to be the father I never had. Wanted to raise a child who knows what real love looks like. But I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid I'd mess it up. That whatever darkness is in me would pass to them. That I'd become… He couldn't finish. You could never become him, Elena said firmly. You could never become Derek or anyone like him. You're nothing like them. How do you know? Because I know you, because I've seen you with the kids at the shelter, patient and gentle and kind, because you've spent the last 2 years protecting people instead of hurting them. She took his hand. You are going to be an amazing father, Marcus. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Okay, Bemante. Let's do it. Let's have a baby. Let's build a family. Elena threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. He held her tight and she could feel him trembling, not with fear, but with something else. Joy, maybe. Hope. The same feelings that were flooding through her own heart. I love you, she said. I love you too, more than I ever thought I could love anyone. They sat there as the sun finished setting, wrapped in each other's arms, dreaming of a future they'd never dared to imagine. 14 months later, Elena gave birth to a daughter. They named her Maria after Marcus's sister. She had her father's dark eyes and her mother's stubborn chin, and from the moment she arrived, she changed everything. Elena had thought she understood love, had thought her relationship with Marcus, her connection to the women she helped, had taught her what it meant to truly care about another person. She was wrong. The love she felt for her daughter was something else entirely. Fierce, primal, a force that rewrote her entire understanding of the world. She's perfect, Marcus whispered, holding Maria for the first time. His massive hands were impossibly gentle, cradling her like she was made of glass. She has your nose. Poor kid. Elena laughed. I happen to love your nose. You have terrible taste. Clearly, I married a Hell's Angel with a criminal record. Marcus looked up at her, his eyes soft. Best decision you ever made. Second best. First was walking out of that alley alive. They brought Maria home to a house full of people. Grace was there, and Ruby and Tommy, and a dozen others who had become family over the years. The original Hell's Angels crew stood guard outside, looking completely out of place with blue balloons tied to their motorcycles. It was chaotic and loud and absolutely perfect. That night, after everyone had gone and Maria was sleeping in her crib, Elena stood at the window of the nursery and let herself remember. She remembered the alley, the fear, the feeling of Derek's fingers around her throat. She remembered Marcus's voice cutting through the darkness. The moment she realized she wasn't going to die. She remembered the long, hard road to recovery, the setbacks, the triumphs, the days when getting out of bed felt impossible, and the days when anything seemed achievable. And she remembered the women, all 247 of them. Every face, every story, every life that had intersected with hers and been changed because of it. You okay? Marcus's voice soft behind her. Better than okay. She turned to face him. I'm grateful for all of it, even the parts that hurt. Even Derek. Elena considered the question. It was one she'd asked herself many times over the years. Even Derek, she said finally. Because if he hadn't done what he did, I never would have ended up in that alley. Never would have met you. Never would have built second chances. Never would have helped all those women. Never would have had Maria. That's a generous way to look at it. It's not generous. It's practical. I can't change the past. Can't erase the pain or the fear or the years I lost. But I can decide what it means. And I've decided it means something good. Something that matters. Marcus pulled her into his arms. You're remarkable, you know that. I'm a survivor. That's all. That's everything. They stood there holding each other as their daughter slept and the night settled around them. 2 years later, Second Chances celebrated its 5th anniversary. The organization had grown beyond anything Elena had imagined. There were now 3 locations across the state, a staff of 45, and partnerships with hospitals, police departments, and social services agencies. They'd helped over 1,000 women, trained hundreds of volunteers, changed laws, changed lives. Elena was no longer the face of the organization. She'd stepped back to focus on strategic planning and, more importantly, on raising Maria. But her fingerprints were on everything they did. Her vision, her values, her unwavering belief that everyone deserved a second chance. The anniversary gala was held at the original building. Elena stood at the podium looking out at a crowd that included politicians, donors, survivors, and friends. Marcus was in the front row, Maria squirming on his lap. 5 years ago, Elena began, I was dying in an alley. A man I thought loved me had his hands around my throat, and I was sure that was the end of my story. She paused, letting the words settle. But it wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a journey I never expected, a journey that brought me here to this moment surrounded by people who have become my family. Her voice strengthened. Second chances exist because one person stopped to help, because one person decided that my life was worth saving, and that's the message I want to leave you with tonight. We all have the power to be that person, to stop when we see someone in need, to offer a hand, to say you are not alone. She looked at Marcus at the tears streaming down his face. I have been blessed beyond measure, with a partner who shows me every day what real love looks like, with a daughter who makes me want to be better, with a community that has rallied around a vision of hope and healing. She straightened her shoulders. But this isn't about me. It never was. It's about the women we serve, the lives we change, the cycle of violence we break one person at a time. And as long as there are people who need help, we will be here, ready, waiting, with open arms and open hearts. The applause lasted for 3 full minutes. Afterward, as the crowd mingled and celebrated, Elena slipped outside for a moment of quiet. The night air was cool and clear. Stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the sweetness of it. Mom. She turned. Maria was standing in the doorway holding Marcus's hand. What is it, sweetheart? Daddy said you look well. Are you Cheyenne? Elena knelt down to her daughter's level. No, baby. I'm not sad. I'm happy. So happy it makes me want to cry. That's silly. Crying is for sad. Sometimes crying is for happy too. You'll understand when you're older. Maria considered this with the seriousness only a 2-year-old could muster. Okay, she said finally. Can we have cake now? Elena laughed. Yes, we can absolutely have cake now. She took Maria's hand and Marcus's arm, and together they walked back into the celebration. Later that night, after Maria was asleep and the gala was over, Elena and Marcus sat on the porch of their home. Hell of a night, Marcus said. Hell of a life. He took her hand. Any regrets? Elena thought about everything that had led them here. The pain, the fear, the long, hard road to healing, the love, the purpose she'd found in the wreckage of her broken life. Not one, she said. Not a single one. Marcus squeezed her hand. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. You know what I think about sometimes, Elena said. What? That day in the alley when you found me, when you said, she's not yours. What about it? I think about who I was then. Scared, broken, convinced that I'd never be anything more than a victim. She turned to look at him. And then I think about who I am now, a wife, a mother, a leader, someone who has helped hundreds of women find their way out of the darkness. You did that, not me. We did it together, all of us. That's what I finally understand. No one survives alone. No one heals alone. No one builds anything meaningful without help. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then my sister would have loved you. Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. In all the years they'd been together, Marcus had rarely mentioned Maria, the original Maria, the sister he'd lost. Tell me about her, Elena said softly. And he did. For the first time in their relationship, he talked about Maria. Really talked. About her laugh and her kindness and her stubborn refusal to give up on anyone. About the way she'd believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. About the guilt he still carried and the peace he'd finally started to find. They talked until the sun came up, and when the first rays of light broke over the horizon, Elena felt something shift inside her. The last wound she hadn't known she was carrying finally began to heal. The years that followed were full of love, full of challenge, full of moments both ordinary and extraordinary. Maria grew into a fierce, compassionate young woman who inherited her mother's determination and her father's quiet strength. She volunteered at Second Chances from the time she was old enough to answer phones, and by her 18th birthday, she'd announced her intention to study social work. You don't have to do what I do, Elena told her. You can be anything you want. I know, Maria said. This is what I want. Lana couldn't have been prouder. Second Chances continued to grow. Other cities, other states, a national network of support for survivors of domestic violence. Elena's face was on magazine covers. Her voice was in legislative chambers. Her story had inspired thousands of women to leave to heal, to build new lives. But through it all, she never forgot where she came from. Never forgot the alley, the fear, the moment Marcus's voice cut through the darkness. Never forgot that she was one of the lucky ones. On the 10th anniversary of Second Chances, Elena gave what she knew would be her final speech as the organization's founder. I've spent the last decade fighting, she said. Fighting for survivors, fighting for change, fighting against a system that too often fails the people who need it most. She looked out at the crowd, at Marcus and Maria in the front row, at Grace and Ruby and Tommy and all the others who had walked this road with her. But I've learned something in those 10 years, something important. Fighting isn't enough. We need to build communities where violence isn't tolerated, build systems that protect the vulnerable, build a world where no one has to die in an alley because they loved the wrong person. Her voice rose. That's my legacy, not the buildings or the programs or the awards. My legacy is you, every person in this room who has committed to making the world safer, every survivor who has found the courage to leave, every volunteer who has answered a midnight call, every donor who has believed in our mission. She straightened her shoulders. I'm stepping back now, passing the torch to the next generation. But I want you to know, all of you, that you are the reason I survived. You are the reason any of this was possible, and you are the reason it will continue long after I'm gone." The applause washed over her like a wave. Afterward, Marcus found her standing alone looking at the photograph that had started it all. A picture of her from the hospital the day after Derek's first attack. Bruised, broken, but alive. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Elena took one last look at the photograph, at the woman she used to be, at everything she'd overcome. "Yeah," she said, "I'm ready." They walked out together hand in hand. Behind them, the lights of Second Chances glowed warm against the night. And somewhere in the city, a woman was making the hardest phone call of her life. Somewhere, a survivor was taking her first step toward freedom. Somewhere, a story was beginning. Because that's how it worked. That's how it had always worked. One person reaching out to another. One hand pulling someone out of the darkness. One voice saying the words that changed everything. You are not alone. Elena Morrison had learned that lesson in an alley with a stranger's hand around her throat and another stranger's voice cutting through the fear. She had spent the rest of her life passing it on. And now, walking into the night with the man who had saved her, with the life they'd built stretching out before them, she knew one thing for certain. It had all been worth it. Every scar, every tear, every moment of doubt and fear and pain. Worth it, because out of the ashes of her broken life, she had built something that would last forever. A legacy of hope, a testament to survival, a promise that no matter how dark the night, the dawn would always come. And it had. It finally had.